to be able to be guiding this session, especially since it's one of the Latin American group sessions. And this year, Latin America has had a really important role. I think that we are a region that is pushing a lot and that has a really big potential in terms of leadership and change and evolution that we need in the planet. We remind you that there's a simultaneous interpretation. So for all of those that you want, there is a language control at the bottom of your screen. So if you would like to hear it.
Simultaneous translation. So if you want to listen in English, please select English in your preferred language. Hoy tenemos bastantes invitados.
So today we have a lot of guests and time is going to fly. This session is the food security in Latin America, sustainable food and that has an impact in the region. And we're very fortunate to have great guests today. We're going to be talking this time with Ignacio Gerardi from Llana in Jujuy, Argentina. He's been working in the role of small producers, and today he's part of the Seeds Guardian collective that is trying to integrate crops and consumers. We will also be with Alejandro Marius. He's a social entrepreneur. He founded Trabajo en Persona Foundation, Social Civil Society. He has offered a lot of opportunities to vulnerable women and youth to have a dignified life through employment and trades. He's a social entrepreneur from Shrub, and he's a responsible leader from the TMW Foundation. We'll be with two great chefs, Mauro Colagreco, he's an Italian chef, and well, from Italy and Argentina. He has a Michelin star of the Mirabelle restaurant. It is among the 50 best restaurants in the world. We're also with Sumito Estevéz. He's a Chilean chef. He's a social entrepreneur from Venezuela, and he has been a pioneer in Latin America in taking cuisine to an art form through a television channel, even before social networks. And together with his wife, he directs Sumo Gusto in Santiago de Chile. And I'll be joining you, Luis Camargo. I'm Colombian. I am the founder and director of Opepa, and I have dedicated my whole life to education and how to bring experiential education towards learning. And I have found in that process how we have to incorporate our ability to integrate with nature in the processes of development and building a better way of life in the planet. So to start, I would like to start by framing the situation. So Latin America is a region that is not only that only has a huge biodiversity, not only in terms of biology, but also in culture. And we're a region that is immense. It goes from the North Hemisphere to the South Hemisphere. But at the same time, we have very big challenges, especially in the terms of food security. Some numbers, some figures, there are more than 187 millions of people in Latin America that are in what is called food insecurity, which is a lot of people. From those, 50 million people suffer hunger. 5 million are malnutrition. And in that context, we also have 57% of the population, of adult population, with obesity and overweight. 19% in obesity are numbers that figures that when you look at them, they're really surprising, especially because Latin America is a really big producer of fruits and vegetables, and we considering that 50% that is being produced is lost or it's malused. So we start seeing some contradictions that are critical. On the other hand, the agriculture in Latin America is having a very big impact. 60% of the soils are severely damaged. That means that the nutrients in the soil are in a situation where they're not sustainable. They cannot sustain new crops and sustain life. On the other hand, 70% of the fresh water in our region is being extracted for agriculture. And that same water is the one that is being polluted and being recycled into the natural systems. In terms of biodiversity, agriculture in Latin America is responsible for more than 51% in the change of soils, and that has a huge impact, not only in the biological integrity of our region, but also in the ability to sustain life. On the other hand, only 30 species of plants that are being feeding us are 90% of our diet. When we talk that there are more than 7,000 plants that are known that can be used as food, as a food source. So the figures start showing us a very complex landscape, and you have to add climate change. More than 50% of greenhouse gases are linked to agriculture sector. So we have a huge challenge in Latin America in terms of food security and food chains. And that is transferred to the topic of food security. However, we live in a single planet. It's a unit, it's a one system where all life is connected and is interdependent. And this is a fundamental principle that we've forgotten. And unfortunately, forgetting this and leaving that behind has taken us to a critical planetary situation. Life systems in the planet are supported from food. The food is the fundamental base of the movement and recycling of nutrients, not only the food of the human beings, but all the transits and flows in the different ecosystems. So food is one of the key points to face the global issues, not only human issues, but all sustainability issues, because we have to think a little bit different on how we approach those topics. In this context, we can think in sustainability and food production chains from a more holistic perspective. We're not talking only about commerce and production, but we have to start thinking how all those different components connect each other in the food system. And that takes our mind to think, well, food comes from the soil in terms of microorganisms, nutrients, and are giving the earth the ability to generate the food through the seeds, through diversity in seeds, through distribution systems, until we reach consumption. And what we call today consumption that must be translated to an intentional and conscious consumption. And there must also be a connection back to the ground, to the earth. So we're talking about systems that go from the soil, from the earth, to the mouth, back to the soil. And we also have to think about the reduction of food loss and waste, and we have to stop closing the circles. Because if 50% of that food that is being wasted and we could effectively put it in the plates and the food of people, then the problem for access to food would greatly be reduced. This makes us think that the food system is a system that starts at the earth or in the ground. So it's a something that it's bioregional, and it can guarantee security only if we go back to systems that start from the local with a bioregional focus and that allow people not only to have food but to generate economies and different models of economy and strengthen the capacity of the population to feed itself. So in Catalyst, we've tried to map all the initiatives of entrepreneurs in Latin America. And in this graph, you can see that we have initiatives that are go from seed and ground until consumption. And the other initiatives are everywhere. The great problem that we have is that these initiatives are not connected and that we're working from a window, from an independent capsule. And that limits our ability to provide comprehensible solutions, not only in terms of restitution and building up ecosystems again, but also in terms of security and access for food. So it's fundamental that we start to bring a different perspective that allows to regenerate the ecosystems and the food support systems, where bioregional approach is fundamental, where the landscapes start to integrate conservation to agriculture, and where the focus also changes from just generating successful business economically in terms of economy, but also we have also a focus on successful businesses that generate wellness, and not only with the individuals, but with the communities and the systems. So that leads us to think the food systems as systems that allow us to reintegrate with nature. And in that process, we also have to remind ourselves that everything starts from the ground, from the seeds. So if we don't start building from the seeds and from the ground, we're going to have a lot of problems that will keep escalating, and we won't be able to face the food security challenges. So in this session, we would like to introduce to you what is being done, some examples that go from the seeds until the food to the mouth. And with that, I will give the floor to Juan, who's also going to answer this question. What's the role of seed recuperation in this process? Well, so good morning to everyone from Argentina, or from, I'm really happy to be here sharing this space and to thank you for your time. So having said that, to answer that question, it's which really is a deep question, and the answer that I can give you from my perspective is that the role of the seeds is something that it's necessary and urgent. Why? Because the seed, it's a reflection of society. It's a reflection that we have of ourselves, of our neighbors. From the seed, we find elements that help us rethink and help us and give us tools to search solutions that for that great challenge that Luis was talking about at the beginning. It's an issue that it's very complex, that has a lot of scary data of loss that are very big. And the way of how to face that challenge is something that is very complex. So in the seed, we find some answers. That seed that keeps stories, the past, it keeps the present, it holds the future. That seed that for many years and currently a lot of people store and organize in the seed banks who take care of those seeds. We find from seed guardians space to put all that energy to work. We're trying to find a way to articulate that seed and nourish the action of that seed, the action of planting that seed in the place of origin of the seed. From that idea, we start building this project with one foot on the ground and another foot in the kitchen, trying to integrate those three big spheres that Luis was really putting them really well placed. That sphere of producing, consuming, and marketing. Seed Guardians, it's a project that what it looks for, or the goal is to give new meaning to the value of those seeds. And we found that in different countries of South America, seeds were being lost. So the seeds that are being planted anywhere are different to the ones that originally came up in those places. So we have places that are planting seeds that are not from those places. So what that generates are foreign elements in that ecosystem that provides food security. So that great topic that has a lot of corners, but it's really close to everyone. So when we talk about food security, sometimes it takes us to a really complex place in terms of what can we do. And from Seed Guardians, that we try to land those ideas because we think that every single space can generate value and can give something to this movement so that this change can come together. So different indicators shows us the potential of the seed, the amount of elements that it can modify, the fact that you plant that native seed gives a lot of value. So a lot of times in the kitchen, you cannot cook certain recipes, not because you don't have the food, but because you don't have the elements for that food. So, for example, the original corn that will allow us to cook that recipe that is proper of the culture, then we won't be able to do those places. So it's very little what we can do if we don't have those native elements. So it's very complex to become sustainable in economical terms if you're planting seeds that are not competitive. So what's the point of planting a native seed if it's going to be competing with a foreign potato where the percentages of production are going to be higher? So what's being understood right now is in terms of production, is in terms of business. So it's very complex to understand the concept that we're working from food security. So returning to the native seed is giving new value to that seed and everything that comes with it. I don't know, Luis, how are we with the time? I think we're okay. If you can if you can keep going, then we will keep scrolling. So, Mauro, are you there? Yeah. Hello, everyone. So I'll be with you in 2 minutes because I had a little car accident when on my way. So in 2 minutes, I'll be with you. Okay. So coming back together and closing a little bit the questions that Luis had. So it's 10 minutes for a really complex topic. So I will invite you in these 10 minutes. My invitation is try to understand the seed as a place that has the answer and where you will find the tools to give answer to the challenges that we're facing right now. So the native seed has a lot of information. In the native seed, you find the history and you find life. And I'll reiterate, I'll keep going that. So I'll say it again. So from seed guardians, I will try to find those native seeds, and we try to find people that want to plant seeds that from an economic standpoint are not very profitable, but they might not have the flavors that you want to have, but we're looking those seeds that are native to the places, and that person who plants those native plants, those native seeds like potato or corn, that person who wants to plant native seeds is going to be a seed guardians in just by what they're doing. You don't need to wait to sell that production to become someone who works in agriculture. So we believe that that person that chooses to sustain that native seed, to give life to that native seed, is something that is very valuable, and we try to create tools so that is possible. So understanding the complexity that comes with it in terms of profitability, of in terms of homogeneity. So when you go back to what is native, you go back to diversity, and you find that if you go back to that organic production, you're not going to be able to be successful if there are not markets. So going back to native seeds means rethinking all the food systems. So the seeds are in danger. That puts agriculture in danger. And it faces the idea, or it faces the question, which product is better than the other? So are we choosing the right product? So when the variables that we analyze, we will know what's the correct decision, and our decisions as consumers must be aimed towards a good consumption that will mitigate the impact the way our food systems are being set up today. So the way we're doing things right now must change, definitely, and we all have to work together. That goes from the producer of the crop until up to the chef, and through all the production chain and all the food system chain. And that comes with a narrative. And the consumer has to understand that when they're in a place and it doesn't have the flavor that they're expecting, they must know that the decision that they're taking is for the benefit of the planet. That's the idea that we work from our collective. And we articulate that, we try to connect that with the kitchen. So it goes, as Luis was saying, it goes from the ground to the mouth of the consumer. So it's not going to be only a nutritious food, but it's going to be a food that feeds and gives nutrition to a whole systems. So it's giving the idea that the act of eating, of consuming food, is a political act, and that it has impact in very different sectors. And that's the idea that we have. And the whole thing that puts all that together, all those ideas together, is going to be the seed. It's something that is, as I say, it's very complex. It's not something that is not easy, but it's something that is needed. We desperately need that. So I would like to add in that part the importance of recuperating seeds in terms of adaptation to climate change, where there are seeds that have really been lost, when agriculture becomes industrial, and we lost a lot of seeds that have a lot of capacities to adapt to the natural environments where we find ourselves. So they're less sensitive to disease, they're stronger in different climates and elevations. So keeping the seed, saving the seed, it's a way to guarantee food security in our regions. Well, yeah, the seed has always been an element in society that we have always carry around with us. So when we see a seed, and when you study a seed, we can also understand the type of society where we live. By studying the seed, you understand the society. So the loss of seeds is really alarming, but we still have the possibility to, but we can, we're still on time. So we always associate conservation with animals. So you can have a cap that or a T-shirt that says "Save the whales," but we could have, or we should have, a T-shirt that says "Let's save purple mice" or something like that. So we give the floor to Mauro. So hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us, for sharing with us. It's a pleasure to hear you, to listen to you. So, yes, we all know the situation is dire, but there is hope to turn things around. There and yeah, we're going through it. It all starts with how we treat the soils, not just agriculture. And to that, there's connected, yeah, though that's where vegetable life or plant life starts, in that genetic uh, pool that are the seeds, in those carriers of genes that are the seeds. And now people are trying to make monopolies out of it, trying to standardize and homogenize with the single intent of building an economic profit. With they're trying to profit with something that really belongs to all humanity. But that's something that I think we all know here, and we all share that. I think that there's something really terrible happening with food, because we're homogenizing and standardizing the flavors. When we standardize and prioritize a seed because of how profitable it is, how productive it is, it's something that, and when we standardize a process that is a natural process, we're reducing the range of flavors and possibilities that nature offers. So the we have a really incredible diversity in South America, not only in terms of animals, but also in terms of plants. But not only that, but in traditions and recipes and in culture. So we have a big diversity in recipes that have been transmitted from one generation to the next, thanks to thanks in part to that big diversity of fruits and vegetables that we have here. And today we have to protect at all costs. We have to protect that diversity. When we started this project that is Seed Guardians, um, we set it up knowing of the problem that we have in terms of eroding the territories and all the problems that are related to food security. How is it that we produce our foods, how we consume them, how we waste them as well, as Luis was saying, which is something that is perplexing in a continent where there's so much hunger. So all those issues are the things that we think from our collective that have a solution. We can solve those problems thanks to, in part, to the protection of the seeds. So when we protect the seed, you protect everything, or what you protect is life. When you protect life, you also protect the cultural legacy that comes with that seed. And as a chef, I feel that I have a responsibility of that legacy. I feel I have a duty because we're at the forefront. As chefs, we are at the forefront of the product. We're in the firing line. I always say that chefs we manipulate the prime substance. When we make that transformation, to make that transformation, we have to really know if that fruit or that vegetable is in its right point, if it's ripe. We also have to know its cultural and historical legacy. We have to know who produced it, how it was produced. And yeah, all those things are what we want to achieve with our project, which is a project that embraces the whole continent and that tries to take that message to the whole world. So Mauro, yes, you were saying it's very important that we keep eating. Without eating, we're not going to get nutrition. And it's important because it will bring agriculture not only to the table, but to all different sectors. So I would like to Alejandro to share his experience. So thank you very much, Luis. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Luis, with Juan, with Mauro, and with Sumito in something that is so important. Sorry, I interrupt, but I would like to leave a question. Yeah. So we're going to see the question in the slide because something that you can read. It's not that you forget that question. So I have a question for you. Do you have the question there, Luis? No, I don't have it here. So please ask your question. So the question is, what's the relationship between education, entrepreneurship, and the seed? So I think that the education is a vehicle, and we saw that the circles, and we saw a line that goes back and forth, and that's education. So what I wanted to ask you that, how do you combine tradition, education, and seeds? So I'll leave you with that question. So yeah, that's an excellent question. So as Mauro was saying, chefs are the front line. Here in Venezuela, many years ago, we started a process because of ignorance of a way of finding how do people work. And we started that in 2011, a project where we were educating women on how to produce chocolate. So, but in terms of from the seed to the chocolate. So we trained women to produce all the different chocolate products, which were very important for us in Venezuela. And as you know, so oil was the main source of income for Venezuela. But before that, we had the coffee production and the cacao production. So that's where education and work comes in. Why? Because if we produce, why if we have such important prime materials, if we have such a really good cacao, why do we have to import chocolate? If we have the good cacao, why not produce chocolate? If we're not able to value the things that we're producing and transform it into a product that is ready for consume, such as chocolate. I don't know if you know this, but here's a quick anecdote. I was in Switzerland a few years ago, and there I showed this slide, and people didn't know what it was. A lot of you probably know it. You might think it's an orchid, but this is a cacao flower. It's a very beautiful flower, and it's very frail. Venezuela has the highest diversity of cacao in the world, from coast to coast. Almost every region has or might have origin denomination because it is such a big diversity. So us, starting with chocolate, from the organization that I direct, all the women that started working in the different regions of the country started going towards the plantation in a natural manner to become cacao producers. So to start valuing the work that they do, especially so many women at the times of drying it and roasting it and transforming that cacao seed into an almost a little golden cup, because in Choao there's a really rich tradition. We still don't have we have the certification of origin, and the question is, how do we find that the value of the human work? We did the inverse, but at the end, the same organic process gave us back the answer in some way. For that, what we need is education. We have a very good friend who is Maria Giacome, and she started for educating and training a lot of chocolatiers. In the process that is bean to bar, we call it bean to bar. So chambers of commerce started working with us, and we started working with them and with different companies, big companies, small companies, and we started creating an ecosystem that came up. So that ecosystem gives the cacao producers and women a lot of opportunities, and it's been a fantastic experience that we've been working on it for more than 10 years, and it has been developed in a proper manner. So where does entrepreneurship comes in? A lot of these are small producers. In our case, we train women, chocolatiers that work by themselves, and they have their own entrepreneurships. And a lot of them have even earned awards in Paris, and they're recognized. Some of them have exported, some of them have stayed at local markets. And we have an alliance with a chocolatier that is right now in Madrid. And we released a signature collection that has a social impact, because all the profits go back to the program, to the production program, to make it sustainable over time. So it not only has a social impact, but it also has an economic impact and an environmental impact. And besides education and entrepreneurship, we have also focused, and it has been like a boomerang. We've gone from the chocolate to the seed, and now we're going from the seed to the chocolate. So a lot of producers are right now turning into chocolatiers. We were seeing a situation that it's a very complex situations from all sectors, political, social, but that movement that keeps going, that is surviving and that is thriving, and it's being inspired by this richness. So what's the step that we've taken in terms of employment? That we have a lot. For example, we involve woodworkers, mechanics, and so on. So how do we pause from chocolatiers 360 to chefs 360? How do we go from the seed to the chocolate and from the chocolate to the seed? It's a 360-degree turn. So what we've seen that the situation is in our country is very difficult, and that imposes over it. So there are places that are used to malnourishment. I mean, having the fields right next to them, and because people don't know how to set up projects, they're eating, they're generating gastronomic violence. And yeah, that might be a misused term, but it's something that didn't make sense. And this okay, so all these people, we have tried to generate projects that change all that situation. We're working with local stakeholders so that these projects can grow and people can produce their own food and what we have learned from cacao and chocolate, so that the people transform and become seed guardians. We want to bring seed guardians in Venezuela and integrate with the experience from Argentina, and see how we can give a help them so that they can produce their own seed and know how to make the commerce out of it, but more importantly, how to cook it. So how they can that reality come together. So Sumito, who is someone who's a person that is a great friend, and he's a social entrepreneur besides being a chef, I want to give the floor to him so that he can share his experience, his vision, especially what we've seen together with the ingredients, and he can cook something that will help synthesize, summarize what we've said here today. So, hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Right now, I'm in Chile. I don't know if you're seeing me, but yeah, I wanted to take on a topic that has always called my attention. I mean, topics regarding the seed. I was brought up in the field, in the country. So much that my brother, when the first time he saw a mermaid, he called them women trout. That's how rural we were. So I want to go on a little bit on that. So it's logical that we see the seeds, the world of seeds, in something that is tangible. So in economic factors, something that I can touch, that it's a reality, and all the chains that are needed to achieve the climate defense, food security, to stop hunger in the world, etc. And that's tangible. So much that today it's being seen as as a coin, as a currency. Uh, so and that can be seen from a different perspective. So like for instance, from an apocalyptical perspective, with all these seed banks in the poles, but it can also be seen from the vision and the perspective of seed guardians. But we also have to understand that all the different cultures have intangible resources, which are which have been who that are seen also as something important to defend, is something that's the most important achievement. So yesteryear a book was valuable because of how rare it was, but now a book is the value, it's because of the ideas that it has. So when people start thinking that ideas have a value, we have a fundamental change. So what I want to reach, what I'm saying is that there's something fundamental, that we all want to feel ourselves as useful, to have dignity, and to feel important. And when I mean everyone, I mean absolutely everyone. Is the tragedy of the retired, of the old man, or the old person that starts feeling that all the knowledge that they have, no one wants it. No one wants to hear him. It's a tragedy of someone that has a knowledge, and that knowledge is not being used. So here's something that is very important that I don't want to leave behind. So it's when we see a seed, and Mauro put it in a really good terms. Mauro said, we have to understand that when we're defending a seed, we're also defending a cultural legacy. And it's precisely that. When you look for a seed, you search for a seed. For instance, it might have been that that Spanish man that came to America and saw a seed of potato or a chili pepper that he saw. The moment where he takes the seed and goes back to Europe, it's not like the seed of tomato. It's not just a seed. It's taking knowledge that is around how that seed was domesticated. It's taking myths, chants, seasons, types of soils, depth at which it has to be planted, how much water, how am I going to take care of it, how I'm going to sow it. You're taking a block of knowledge that has been transmitted orally. Today it's less orally, but through the centuries. But it's still the same. When I see a seed of a product that I don't know, and someone hands it to me, the first thing that I ask is, how do you plant this? What time of the year? How much water do I use? What depth do I plant it? What type of soil does it need? How do I keep it going? So there's a lot of knowledge that regarded to the rituals of it. And we've made a mistake of that. I think it's really important, and that's to center and focus only in the emergency and economic aspects surrounding the seed. So there's like a certain of genetical apartheid that it's being driven by money, and there's a topic that surrounding monocrops that is basically just generating a big loss of food, because there's not even roads to transport that food. And yeah, there's an emergency, but we have always think, especially the chefs, understand where is the block that has the knowledge on how to use it, because you don't protect your seed if you're not protecting your culture and your identity and the way you see life. And that is something that is very important. So Alejandro was saying that chefs, we're like at the front line. No, we're a penultimate line. The lines start in the culture of the people and it ends in the consumer. We're just an element. We're just a link in a chain that we don't want to be protagonist. Yeah, we have a big egos. We're really good at selling ourselves, at marketing ourselves. We're very good at grabbing slogans and mottos, and we turn them into something that might be frivolous. But we have to understand that we're part of the chain, and at the end, there's an issue of dignity. And I say this with a lot of respect, because in general, the people that are in the cities, we start to get in with big words. We start using big words, but the moment when you understand the knowledge, the immense knowledge, technical and cultural knowledge that people have around a seed, from an artichoke to a chili pepper, you cannot frivolize those concepts, just making it like magical realism, and where you stand at the top of the hill and you connect with a higher consciousness. No, 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 no. We're talking about people that have an immense knowledge, and when you defend the seed, and because I've been with a lot of different people that with rural people, with farmers that are not even organized, and our farmers that are defending the last seeds of a specific type of species. So as I was telling you, from the Andes, from a very high altitude. Uh, so I was with a farmer, and the farmer came and told me about the walking potato. The walking potato. And my dad just sent me a picture of that, the farmer that I was with him. And I asked him, what does walking potato means? And he tells me, have you seen this leaf? Under the leaf, there's always a potato. But that potato grew 1 meter away from this. That means that the potato walked. And you might see it as something funny, as a joke, but think about the knowledge that that person has, and the dignity that that knowledge brings to that person, and the responsibility that I have of learning and showing respect to that enormous intangible thing that it's there. So when us chefs start defending the seed, protecting the seed through it might be producing unique recipes. So this is the first time that I see myself in a virtual space, especially with Mauro, which is a chef that one of the chefs that I most admire in the world, because Mauro is one of the few chefs that if I look for 30 recipes, all the he shows respect to the vegetables in the recipe, and he shows that respect in all and every single plate that he produces. So please, let's defend the means of production. Let's protect everything that is needed to food to human beings. Let's protect the earth. Let's cooperate to protect the things that allow us to fight climate change. And let's not forget that behind that, and we can leave behind the value of dignity and those intangibles. And I say that and I'm going to say with a lot of respect, is not that you talk to the earth and the Pachamama talk to you. No, because we all have different ways of seeing the world, and we have to respect that. But behind that, there's a scientific, technical, cultural, and seasonal knowledge that gives a lot of value, and we have to give value it, because it's going to allow us to get out of this little apocalypse that we've gotten ourselves into. And we're going to achieve that by being respectful to the farmer, to the one that knows how to plant. How is it done? Because you're the one that know it, not me. So yeah, thank you, Sumito. In that sense, it gives a lot of weight to this quote that we said, that everyday life, from the agriculture to the consumer, is going to become a historic change. So thank you, Sumito. Thank you, everyone, for participating. So I'm going to give the floor to Luis so that he can give closure to the session. This really intense hour filled with knowledge and experience. So Luis, go ahead. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you, Sumito. Thank you, Mauro. Thank you, Juan. I think that, or I believe that this can be summarized in something that is very simple, and that's we have to acknowledge the value of soil and food from the awakening of the seed till it reaches our palate. So the food, it goes from the palate to the ground, from the ground to the palate, and it's a constant cycle. And this is key because it helps us have a broader perspective from rather than just from work, but we can connect all the stakeholders. We know how all those stakeholders are interconnected, and how those relationships can guarantee food security in our region. And we have, as some people were saying in the chat, we need to have the capacity to produce locally and generate sustainable food systems. And we have to work with nature so that it can provide the system. So if a road is not working, it's not going to matter, because we will still have a food system that can provide food to the region, to the local places. So it's time to rethink the food system. And we have examples like in Costa Rica, where there was never food production, and they were able that in 3 months, able to give food to 90,000 people. Because they did their homework, they started working with the native seed, they started learning how to produce it and to give and to consume it. And the challenge that we have from Catalyst 2030 and from all the entrepreneurial community is to weave and create a food security system that can consolidate the system that goes from the soil to the mouth. And we're trying to map it, we're trying to connect it, but we need cooperation from everyone that is interested and everyone that is involved in the system. So I invite you to join it and start from whatever it is that you do, start connecting, weaving, and starting to recognize that chain, to strengthen it, and start solving at its base the problems of food security in the region. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And I invite you to connect to us, to participate in the different sessions that we're having. But also I extend an invitation to connect with us, to become involved in what we do, and we can work together. So thank you very much. Luis, sorry, are you going to send the recording and the participation of everyone? Yeah, everything is being recorded. Everything is going to be in the posterior message that you're going to get after the session. So very interesting. So there are different aspects to which everyone can give a different focus, but in the end, they're all just part of the same thing.
Correcto, Miguel. Acá precisamente la idea es